Well, there is a specific kind of person who does everything right and ends up behind. They were the capable one. Top of the class without much effort. The one adults said had potential. And now they're in their 30s, excellent at their job, relied on by everyone. And quietly, financially, stuck. Meanwhile, someone they went to school with, someone objectively less capable, is doing considerably better. The instinct is to call this luck. Some of it is. But a large part of it is a documented pattern, and the research on it is more specific than you'd expect. It shows up in promotion data, in developmental psychology, and in 50 years of work on how people protect their own self-image. This video is about 3 mechanisms. Each one is a strength that stopped paying. And at the end, 3 specific reversals, small, unglamorous and testable. Start with the uncomfortable finding. Intelligence does predict income. Meta-analytic work by Strenze, pooling decades of longitudinal studies, puts the correlation between IQ and earnings at roughly 0.2. Real, consistent and much weaker than most people assume. Education and parental background predict about as well. Then it gets stranger. Zagorsky, working with the US National Longitudinal Survey of Youth, found that higher intelligence predicted higher income, but essentially no advantage in accumulated wealth. Smarter people in that sample earned more and had no more net worth. Some were more likely to report financial distress. Sit with that. The thing that gets you paid does not get you rich. Whatever converts income into wealth is not measured by the tests we use for intelligence. So the question isn't whether smart people are capable. Obviously they are. The question is what capability is being spent on. Here's the frame for everything that follows. Advantage is not the same as ability. Ability is what you can do. Advantage is what the system around you does in response. And systems do not respond to ability directly. They respond to signals, incentives, and convenience. A person can be enormously able and still sit inside a system with no mechanism for converting that ability into anything. That mismatch has 3 main forms. The first happens to you. The second happens inside you. The third disguises itself as work. The first mechanism is structural, and there's hard data on it. In 2019, economists Alan Benson, Danielle Lee and Kelly Shue published an analysis of roughly 40,000 sales workers across 130 companies. They asked a simple question. Who gets promoted to management and what happens next? The answer? Firms promoted their best salespeople, and those promoted for high individual sales went on to be worse managers. The better the salesperson, the worse the manager, on average. Their teams underperformed. This is the Peter Principle with a data set behind it. But notice the shape of the incentive, because it's the part that matters for you. Organisations promote based on performance in the current job, not evidence of fitness for the next one. So being outstanding at what you currently do is the signal that moves you into something you may be bad at, or, if the org needs you where you are, into nowhere at all. And that second case is the trap. Because an organisation has no incentive to move someone out of a role they're exceptional at and hard to replace in. You solve problems quickly, so you receive more problems. You catch the errors, so error catching becomes yours. You never drop anything, so everything gets handed to you. You get thanked. You get relied on. You get a modest raise. Your competence inside a system that runs on other people's convenience becomes the reason nothing changes. There's a related pattern in the workplace literature worth naming carefully. Studies on task allocation, Linda Babcock and colleagues on non-promotable work, find that tasks with low career value but high organisational need get distributed unevenly, and that willingness to accept them predicts receiving more of them. This work focuses heavily on gender differences, and that's where the evidence is strongest, so I won't overclaim beyond it. But the underlying mechanism is not gendered. Reliability attracts load, and load is not the same as advancement. Being good at your job is not a strategy. It's a precondition. Nobody tells capable people this because everyone benefits from them not knowing. The second mechanism lives inside you, and it was probably installed before you were 10. If you spent childhood being told you were smart, your sense of worth may have fused with being right rather than with getting better. The classic work here is Carol Dweck's. In studies with Claudia Müller, children praised for intelligence after a task later chose easier problems, showed less persistence, and were more likely to misreport their scores compared to children praised for effort. Same children, different sentence said to them. Now, a necessary caveat, and this is the kind of thing this channel will always tell you. The applied version of this, school-wide growth mindset interventions, has had a rough decade. Large replications and meta-analyses find effects that are real but small and concentrated in specific groups rather than universal. So treat praise effort, not ability, as a modest, well-evidenced nudge, not a life-changing law. The underlying observation about contingent self-worth, though, holds up across a much broader literature. Jennifer Crocker's work on contingencies of self-worth is the sturdier ground. When your self-esteem is staked on a particular domain, competence, intelligence, achievement, failure in that domain isn't an event. It's an identity threat. And people protect identity far more fiercely than they pursue gain, which produces a very specific adult behaviour. You only enter games you already know you can win. You stay in the role where you're excellent instead of the one where you'd be mediocre for 18 months. You research the venture for 2 years rather than run it badly for 2 months. You keep the option open, because an unopened option can never fail. And nearly every route to meaningful financial or professional upside runs through a period of being visibly, publicly not yet good. That's the trap. The intelligence isn't the problem. The intelligence built a self-concept that cannot survive the exact experience that produces the outcome you want. The third mechanism is the most disguised, because it looks exactly like diligence. In 1978, Stephen Berglas and Edward Jones ran an experiment that named something uncomfortable. Participants who had succeeded on a test in a way they couldn't explain, success that felt unearned, were more likely to choose a performance-inhibiting drug before the next test. Given a chance to hand themselves an excuse, they took it. That's self-handicapping. You create an obstacle in advance so that failure can be attributed to the obstacle rather than to you. It's not laziness, it's insurance on the self-image. Capable adults rarely do this crudely. They don't sabotage, they prepare. They redesign the system, they compare the tools. They take one more course, read one more book, build a better plan for the thing they have not started. It uses the same muscles as work. It produces the same tiredness. But notice what it never produces: exposure. You cannot fail at planning. Planning is infinitely safe. There's a useful test. Ask how much of what you did last month could have been observed and judged by a stranger. If the honest answer is almost none, that wasn't a productive month. It was a well-defended one. 3 shifts, small and deliberately unmotivational. 1. Separate identity from output. Not I am capable, so this must work. Instead, I am running experiments and most experiments return nothing. That sounds like a cliché until you see what it does mechanically. It detaches self-worth from a single result, which is the only thing that makes repeated attempts psychologically survivable. You're not trying to be right, you're trying to gather information. Information is cheap when your ego isn't posted as collateral. 2. Trade some competence for some visibility. Take on one thing this quarter you are genuinely underqualified for, where the result is visible to people who matter, not reckless, uncomfortable, given the promotion data. This is also just accurate strategy. Systems reward observed signals, and being reliable in the background produces no signal at all. It'll feel like being caught out. There's no version of it that feels good. That feeling is the cost of leaving. 3. Put a ceiling on preparation. Give every new project a fixed preparation budget. 2 weeks, 10 hours, whatever is honest for that thing. When it's spent, you begin underprepared, on purpose. The information you're missing is almost never in another book. It's on the other side of doing the thing badly once. The thing worth sitting with is that none of this is a deficiency. Every mechanism in this video is a strength aimed somewhere that stopped paying. Caution kept you safe. Preparation made you excellent. Being right earned you approval at 9 years old, when you had no other currency and no say in the matter. They simply have an expiry date, and nobody announces it. It passes somewhere around the point where the world stops testing you and starts asking what you intend to build. Most people never notice. They stay capable, reliable, underpaid, and mildly confused about it for another 20 years. You just noticed. That counts for something. But only if one thing is different by next week. So pick one. Identity separation, visible risk, or a preparation ceiling. 1. Sources for everything in this video are in the description. Next, why your brain sabotages you specifically when success gets close. The same trap wearing a different mask.